It had been raining all morning in Tacoma, the kind of cold, unrelenting drizzle that seeps into the bones. I stood at the kitchen sink mug of coffee cooling in my hand, watching the gutters overflow outside my window. The house was still too still. Leora's laughter usually filled every corner, but she wasn't with me this weekend. I had dropped her off with my sister Delaney the night before against my better instincts. The phone rang. I glanced at the screen and felt my stomach knot. Leora. Mommy. Her voice cracked through the receiver, small and shaking. Auntie Dee kicked me out. She said I'm too loud. I blinked. What do you mean, baby? Where are you? I'm outside. It's raining. A wet sniffle, then silence. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't ask for details. The phone clattered to the counter as I grabbed my purse and keys with trembling hands. No coat, no umbrella. I barely remembered to lock the door behind me before I was sprinting down the stairs. The car's engine groaned as I turned the ignition. My hands were slick with sweat. The wipers thrashed uselessly against the windshield. I kept hearing her voice. I'm outside. I'd only ever heard her cry like that once before the night her dad packed his bags and didn't look back. Delaney's house was just 15 minutes away, but it felt like 1,000. I ran a stop sign. I didn't care. Every breath I took was jagged with fury and fear. When I finally pulled up to her pristine 2-story colonial, something inside me buckled. There on the front porch steps sat my daughter, soaked through knees pulled to her chest. Her pink hoodie clung to her skin. Her backpack was open beside her, the contents spilling onto wet concrete socks, crayons, a paperback book curling at the edges. I leapt from the car and gathered her into my arms. She was shivering. Her lips were a pale shade of blue. She said, I'm too loud, she whispered against my neck. I was just singing Mama. I pressed my cheek to her damp hair. She didn't cry. That scared me most. And then, the door opened. The door creaked open behind me as I cradled Leora tighter against my chest. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. The sound of heels tapping on the stone porch light and Careless told me exactly who it was. Well, Delaney drawled, that was fast. I turned slowly, shielding Leora with my body. Delaney stood there in a silk robe, holding a mimosa like she was on vacation. Her blonde hair was pinned flawlessly in rollers. Not a drop of rain had touched her. She was screaming like a banshee while I was on a Zoom call, she said, sipping casually. I needed peace. I stared at her. You put a 6-year-old outside, in a thunderstorm. Delaney rolled her eyes. She was being a brat, I warned her. Honestly, you coddle her so much it's no wonder she doesn't respect anyone. Leora stirred in my arms, pressing her face deeper into my neck. She said you hit her, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Delaney didn't flinch. It was a slipper on her backside. That's not abuse, it's parenting. I looked at her, really looked at her. Her smile was smug, like she'd won some invisible competition. There wasn't an ounce of remorse in her voice, not even a crack. Just that glint of superiority she'd always worn like perfume. She was just singing, I said. She told me that. Delaney shrugged. Loud is loud. I didn't answer. There was nothing else to say. The conversation had ended before it began. I turned back toward the car, opened the door with one hand, and slid Leora into the back seat, wrapping her in the emergency blanket I kept there. Her small hands clutched at the fabric like it was the only safe thing left in the world. Delaney called after me something snide I didn't register. I closed the car door, then the driver's side, and drove off without looking back. The road home was slick and silent. Leora's eyes fluttered shut, exhaustion overtaking her. I watched her in the rearview mirror and felt something cold and unrelenting settle into my chest. I didn't cry. Not yet. Not while she was still awake. Leora fell asleep wrapped in towels on the couch, her small body curled like a comma, her breathing soft but uneven. I sat nearby, the lights dimmed the television off and let the silence press in around me. Memories I hadn't invited started to surface. I thought of the time Delaney won Little Miss Evergreen County. She was 7, maybe 8. My mother had curled every strand of her hair the night before and polished her shoes until they gleamed. I stood in the audience that day in my church dress, clapping on cue. No one noticed I'd won a science fair ribbon the same week. It wasn't even mentioned. Delaney got roses. I got told to smile more. She was always the easy one, the palatable one. She didn't question rules or argue with teachers. She coasted on charm and soft rebellion. I was the one who asked too many questions. I once told our aunt that I didn't believe in fairy tales. I was 9. She called me cold. By high school, the pattern was set. Delaney was prom queen. I wrote an op-ed about student debt and was labeled difficult. Our parents paid for her out-of-state college in full. I worked 2 jobs to afford a state school, then came home and didn't tell them when I made the dean's list. I already knew they wouldn't ask. When I got married, it was a quiet ceremony in a courthouse. My mother wore beige. My father didn't take photos. When I got divorced 3 years later, they told people it was because I was too independent. Now, Delaney's wedding was being planned like a royal coronation. Spa weekends, champagne tastings, bespoke dress fittings. My mother had a binder. My father gave a toast at the engagement dinner and cried. They didn't even call when I had Leora. I used to think if I just stayed quiet long enough, played nice, they'd see me. That maybe one day I'd matter in the same way Delaney did, with less effort, more grace. But sitting there watching Leora sleep, I realized I'd spent my life asking permission from people who never saw me in the first place. And the next morning, they proved it. The morning after the storm, the rain had thinned into a gray mist, but inside me, nothing had cleared. I made oatmeal for Leora and pretended not to flinch every time she moved too fast. She didn't mention Delaney. She didn't ask why we left so suddenly. She just ate in silence, her spoon clinking softly against the bowl. Once she was settled with a cartoon and a blanket, I stepped into the hallway and dialed my parents. My mother answered. "Good morning, sweetheart," she said too brightly. I skipped the greeting. "Mom." I picked up Leora yesterday. She was outside, in the rain, alone, soaked through. Delaney hit her with a slipper and shoved her onto the porch. There was a beat of silence. Then, well, she didn't mean it like that. I gripped the phone tighter. She was freezing. Her lips were blue. "That's not discipline, that's abuse." "Oh, Callista," she said with a sigh. "You always exaggerate. I'm sure it wasn't that dramatic. She's 6, I said. 6. And Delaney put her outside like a dog. A sound came through the phone, then soft, breathy. Laughter. "I'm sorry," my mother said, still chuckling, "but you have to admit Leora can be a bit much sometimes. Maybe she just needs to toughen up." My throat closed. "You think that's funny. Don't make this into a thing," she said. "Please. Your sister is under so much pressure with the wedding. This is not the time to stir drama." "She hit my daughter," I said flatly. "You're always finding a reason to ruin her moments. Just let her have this one, please." I ended the call. I stood there in the hallway for a long time, staring at nothing. The fog outside pressed against the windows. Leora's soft humming filtered through the wall. That laugh stayed with me. It echoed louder than the storm had. They hadn't protected me when I was small, and now they wouldn't protect her. I walked back into the living room, kissed Leora's temple, and pulled the throw blanket tighter around her shoulders. Then I opened my laptop. The login screen blinked at me, asking for a password I hadn't used in months. I typed it from memory, steady fingers, slow breath. Once inside, I opened a secure folder labeled only with a date 2 years ago, the project that changed everything. No one in my family knew about the biotech consultancy I'd helped build from a shoestring concept into a profitable venture. Delaney once called it your little side hustle, waving it off like a craft hobby. But it had led to clients, then investors, then a payout I never flaunted because survival doesn't always leave space for celebration. While Leora napped, I opened Tabs Contracts, Private Contacts, the secure messaging platform I used for sensitive requests. I messaged Felix, a cybersecurity specialist I'd worked with during a data compliance audit. Can you retrieve external porch cam footage from a Ring system at this address? Timestamp yesterday afternoon. Payment up front. His reply came 10 minutes later. Already done. You always did prepare ahead. I opened the file and watched. The clip wasn't long, but it was enough. Leora stepping out barefoot, her hands clutching her stuffed llama. Delaney's voice sharp. Then the slap, then the door closing behind her. I didn't cry watching it. I just saved the file to 3 encrypted drives and drafted a message I wouldn't send yet. No more calls, no dramatic confrontations, no shouting matches on speakerphone that ended with accusations and silence. I wasn't going to ask them to believe me. I wasn't going to ask for their help. I was going to remove the one thing they worshipped more than family Delaney's image. Brick by brick, I would dismantle the pedestal they had placed her on and show them what they had chosen to protect. The click of the laptop closing echoed louder than I expected. My jaw ached from how tightly I had clenched it. I stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the soft gray of the clouds beginning to split. The storm hadn't passed. It had just changed location, and I had just made my first call. The venue sat just outside the city, tucked along the edge of a quiet lake, gated and surrounded by tall pines. I remembered Delaney bragging about it during brunch one weekend, exclusive, elegant, exactly my vibe. My mother had nodded like she'd just heard gospel. I called the club the same day I received the footage. I asked for a private consultation with the director. It wasn't hard. A wire transfer and a reference from one of my former clients did most of the talking. The man who met me there wore a blazer and kept saying Miss Rowan like I was someone who belonged. I toured the space with a practiced calm, white pillars, lake view, enough space for 200 guests. I didn't need 200. I needed intention. I'd like to reserve the space for June 17th, I said. The same day as the Rowan Smythe wedding, he asked. It was, I replied. The paperwork was done in less than 48 hours. They would notify the previous party after final confirmation. I didn't ask when. I didn't need to. I named the event an Evening of Resilience and kept the guest list short. No parents, no Delaney, just former colleagues who once overlooked me, extended family who'd long since forgotten my phone number, and a few people who'd watched me build something from nothing but never thought to say they were proud. I hired a caterer and a local quartet. I ordered 30 frames, some filled with Leora's drawings, others with stills from project milestones. My first pitch deck a signed contract from my highest-paying client. The LLC certificate I received on the same day, Leora turned 4. I printed one photo larger than the rest, Leora paint-stained and smiling, holding a cardboard sign that read, "I helped Mama build her dream." I had it placed right near the entrance. This wasn't for revenge. Not really. It was for the truth. For everything they refused to see. For what they never thought mattered. 3 days later, the club sent Delaney the cancellation notice. And that evening, my phone rang. I never said it was me. I didn't sign the email, I didn't attach a name. I simply created a temporary address, attached the footage with a brief line. This is what some families call love, and send it to 3 parenting bloggers I knew had opinions and reach. I waited. It took 48 hours. The first video appeared under the headline, "Caught on Camera When Tough Love Crosses a Line." The blogger blurred Leora's face. Delaney's wasn't. By the end of the day, it had over 200,000 views. Comments filled with words like monstrous entitled disgusting. Other outlets picked it up. The video made the rounds TikTok, Instagram, even a parenting subreddit where mothers dissected every frame like courtroom analysts. Her sponsors reacted first. Clean Skincare, a subscription jewelry brand, and 2 lifestyle platforms severed ties publicly. One cited values misalignment, another simply posted, "We do not support child abuse, full stop." Then her fiancé. He didn't post, he didn't comment. He just unfollowed her, deleted their engagement photos, and returned to his parents' home in Vermont. Quietly, deliberately. The call came that night. "You ruined my life," Delaney hissed. "No," I said calmly. "You did that the moment you slapped a 6-year-old and locked her outside. I was overwhelmed. It was a bad day." "She was singing," I replied. "That's what children do." There was silence on her end. Then she tried again, her voice pitched sharper. "You've always been bitter. You waited for this. I waited for you to change," I said. "Instead, you proved exactly who you are." I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I let her rant, let her call me every name she'd saved up over the years. Then I hung up. The next morning, a follow-up article ran, "The Family Behind the Footage Silence Enablers and the Cost of Image." It mentioned the parents, too. Their silence, their laughter. The internet didn't forget, and the invitations had already gone out. The skies were clear that morning, the lake still and glassy as the sun rose over the tree line. The club's entryway smelled faintly of cedar and lemon polish. Staff in black-pressed uniforms lit votives along the staircase. A string quartet began tuning in the reception hall. The sign at the front gate was simple, printed on heavy cardstock, and propped between 2 vases of pale lilies. "Private celebration of strength and survival. By invitation only." Guests trickled in, former co-workers, old classmates, even a few distant relatives. Some looked confused, others curious, but none turned away. Inside, framed photos lined the hallway, Leora drawing chalk hearts on the sidewalk, me standing in front of my second office, ribbon cutting an award from a tech publication no one in my family had ever acknowledged. The ballroom was quiet, reverent, almost. A slideshow played in soft rotation, Leora's kindergarten certificate, my first consulting contract, her first lost tooth, the 2 of us baking cupcakes in our tiny kitchen covered in flour. I stood near the back watching their faces as they took it in. Then the doors burst open. Delaney stood in the entrance veil, tangled in one hand, makeup streaked like melted paint. Her heels clicked violently on the hardwood as she stormed through the crowd, eyes wild. "What the hell is this?" she spat. No one answered. This was supposed to be my wedding day. I stepped forward, hands steady at my sides, and instead, it's the day everyone saw the truth. She looked at our parents standing off to the side, pale and quiet. For once, they had no script, no rehearsed lines. The footage had aired on a local channel that morning. Even they couldn't spin it anymore. "You," Delaney began. "You hit my daughter," I said, "and you left her in the rain like trash. You mocked me. You erased us." Her eyes darted across the room, every face watching her unravel. I stepped closer, low enough only she could hear. "Every time you hear thunder," I said, "you'll remember what you did." And as she turned away, broken, the music swelled behind her. They found me outside near the patio where the lake reflected the late afternoon sun. My mother's heels crunched softly on the gravel path. My father followed a few steps behind, hands shoved in his pockets like a boy caught skipping class. "She's devastated," my mother said quietly. "You've made your point." I didn't respond. I watched Leora through the glass, spinning slowly in her dress, with one of the servers who'd taken a shine to her. She was laughing again, freely. She's lost everything my father added. The fiancé, the sponsors her name. I turned to face them. So did Leora. That night. "And you laughed. That wasn't fair," my mother said quickly. You laughed." I said again, slower this time. "You didn't ask if she was okay. You didn't come to see her. You didn't call back. She's your sister," my father said, a tired plea in his voice. "And I'm your daughter," I replied. They looked away like the weight of that line hurt more than they expected. I didn't do this to destroy her, I said. I did it to protect my child, something you never did for me. My mother's mouth trembled. We didn't know how to help you back then. You still don't, I said, but that doesn't mean I'll let you pretend you did. A long silence stretched between us, held together by the breeze and the faint music from inside. She needs help, my father finally muttered. Then let her get it, I said, but not at our expense. Not again. They didn't follow me when I walked away. They stayed near the railing looking out at the lake, two people suddenly small in a world they didn't know how to control anymore. Inside, the quartet had started again. Leora twirled her curls, bouncing cheeks flushed with joy. I stood just beyond the doorway watching her move through the light and realized this silence, this clarity wasn't punishment. It was peace. And 2 weeks later, the doorbell rang. It had been 6 months. The rain had returned as it always did in Tacoma, but this time it felt different. Clean. Distant. The second office opened on a Thursday morning, small but bright. I hung Leora's painting above the reception desk, 4 stick figures holding hands under a sun that took up half the sky. She said it was us and all the brave people we haven't met yet. There were flowers from clients, a card from my assistant, and a quiet sense that maybe, just maybe, I had finally stepped into the life I'd always been building, just without asking permission. I was reviewing a contract when the knock came. I opened the door and found Delaney on the other side. No makeup, no heels, just a hoodie and the kind of shadows under her eyes that come from weeks of reckoning. She didn't speak right away, just held out a folder. I'm sorry, she said, her voice small. I lost everything. Sponsors, friends, even myself. I thought I was strong because I could be loud. But you, she paused. You were the strong one all along. Inside the folder were documents, therapy attendance logs, a signed affidavit admitting what she'd done, and a letter addressed to Leora in careful handwriting. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. I just needed to kneel. I didn't cry. I didn't soften. I simply took the folder and nodded once. I didn't do it for her. I did it for the child who once asked me, why do they hate me? Mommy, later that evening, I sat with Leora in our living room. She was older now, in little ways, quieter, more thoughtful. I handed her the letter without a speech. She opened it with her small hands, lips moving silently as she read. She didn't say anything at first, just folded the paper, set it on the table, and climbed into my lap. She wrote my name in bubble letters, she whispered. I kissed the top of her head and held her close, knowing with certainty she would never again question what she deserved.